So everybody got the attendance part, right? So I hope that is clear now. So anyways, the syllabus I think it does says that 75% attendance means pass, otherwise you're a fail. So just be aware about that. If that rule is applied, then many students I think will fail in a way. So for my internal marks evaluation, 90% attendance is important. So I say 90% because I don't even miss one lecture, because in one lecture you miss a lot. So okay. So that diagram. So far what we have covered is cloud security mechanisms, cloud infrastructure mechanisms, right? And where we dealt with network storage, um, right, and machines. So now we are going to work on, so let me just quickly bring that up. So we covered cloud security mechanisms. We looked at you know the different techniques to secure your cloud. Then we went into infrastructure, where we looked at networks, virtual server, storage, cloud usage monitor, right? How do we monitor the usage in the sense, how do we monitor? So there were three different type of agents. So there was a monitoring agent, resource agent, polling agent, and there was a difference in them, right? Some were monitoring the networks, some were monitoring the resource. Like, if it has started, if it has if it has initiated, has it been started as yet, and some polling agent would basically just make sure that whether something is up or down, right? And so then we have resource replication, right? We want to replicate our resource constantly. We want to multiply our machines to the least, right? That is the most basic thing we want to multiply, because the resource is not able to manage the load. So resource replication is also one of the infrastructure. That was about resource replication. And lastly, we had spoken about ready-made environments, right? Where we just like we provide infrastructure, we are also providing platforms, right? So that is a ready-made environment. So whatever services we are looking at, S3 service or Lambda service, everything is a platform. So what are specialized cloud mechanisms? Specialized cloud mechanism is something that you have a base as your cloud infrastructure mechanism, right? On the top of that, you want to um, basically now use this cloud infrastructure mechanism. Use the cloud infrastructure mechanism to you know do something, right? Something more. So what is that something more? So that's why it's called specialized cloud mechanisms. where you want to do some activity using all the infrastructure mechanisms. So specialized cloud mechanism does not mean it is not using um, cloud infrastructure mechanism. So let me draw the diagram. So there is cloud infrastructure mechanisms, right? Oh yeah. So when we say we have cloud infrastructure mechanisms, means we have all these facilities over here, right? We can what we can do, we can create networks using logical network parameter. We can create machines using the virtual server. We can create storage, right, using cloud storage. What is the exact term? Cloud storage device, right? So in this we had four types, right? In cloud storage device we had block storage, we had file storage, we had database storage, and there was I think let me see when I'm forgetting. So you'll have to remember all this while answering, okay? So there was block storage, there was file storage, database storage, and object storage. Object storage, the example of object storage is S3, and the example of block storage would be EBS, elastic block storage. Okay, so where is the P? Right, and then we have cloud usage monitor, right, which will keep on checking whether the machines are up, which will just make sure monitor the network traffic, whether there is any performance issues, right? That all those things would be checked by the cloud usage monitor. And then we may want to replicate the resource, so replication mechanism will be there in place. So these are all programs ultimately, okay, which is catered to do something. And then finally we have the platform one, right? What is the platform one called? It's on right top. So just a little bit time today. So ready-made environment. So there are 6 mechanisms at infrastructure level. That is what we are looking at to do all this work to manage the cloud at the infrastructure level. So this is what you need to remember. But now this will be used by, that is what I'm saying, this will be used by whom? There will be more things on the top of this, will be used by cloud specialized mechanisms. So cloud specialized mechanism does not mean it is something different, okay? It will definitely internally, if something you are dealing with networks or machines, it will use that, underlyingly. So it will use if it wants to use it. So cloud specialized mechanism will use cloud infrastructure mechanisms. And what are the cloud infrastructure mechanisms? These are the 6 cloud infrastructure mechanisms. So if somebody wants to create a platform, then definitely one would go for a ready-made environment. If somebody wants to replicate a resource, we will go for resource replication program. if now it does not mean now resource replication and ready-made environment is only activated only when needed, but cloud usage monitor may be active, right? Like polling agent is always active, wherever it is, whatever machines you're creating, somebody is requested a machine to be created, that machine has to be constantly been checked whether it is up or down. So who is doing that job? That job is done by cloud usage monitor polling agent. So networks is also all the time alive, right? It is not, whenever you need it, it will create it, but once you create it, it has to be constantly be checked for performance. In the same way, storage, right? That is also a resource. So we have a resource agent, right? So we have to constantly look at whether that resource is doing okay or not. So what are these cloud specialized mechanisms? So that is what we are looking at. So if we understand the cloud characteristics, right? What are the cloud characteristics? On-demand usage, ubiquitous access, multi-tenancy and resource pooling, elasticity, measured usage, resiliency. So basically, how does cloud implement this? And this is where your specialized cloud mechanisms will come into place. The specialized cloud mechanisms are put in place to address all these requirements. These are the requirements of the cloud. If there is a cloud, then it has to fulfill all the 6 characteristics. And how they implement it? Using specialized cloud mechanisms. So what are the 6 types? On-demand usage means ability of the cloud provider to provide any service anytime, right? Anywhere, any part of the world, I want a machine, I want to provide rapidly provision. Then ubiquitous access, ability of the cloud provider to provide any service anywhere on any device. Multi-tenancy and resource pooling, ability of the cloud provider to manage multiple cloud consumers. So there are many consumers coming in, right? So this is also a requirement that you have to separate out one consumer from the other consumer. Whatever one consumer data is, one consumer is using data, that data should not be shared with other cloud consumers. Then elasticity, ability of the cloud provider to let consumers grow or shrink its resource as per the application needs. So elasticity, definitely resource replication will be coming here, right? Where we are trying to increase the number of resources and decrease the number of resources. So measured usage, ability of the cloud provider to measure the quantity and quality of usage of any particular resource. So as part of measuring usage, definitely one of the things that we have to do is cloud usage monitor, right? And that is the mechanism that we have to monitor if something is running up or not. So measured usage somewhere down the level, cloud usage monitor will definitely be used. Resiliency, ability of the cloud provider to ensure that the applications can heal itself and be made available again, irrespective of any attack or disaster. So again, in this case, you have to know whether the machine is up or the resources up or down. So if the resource is down, then immediately because we want to be resilient. Resilient means even if I'm if I'm attacked on one thing, I will simply have a backup to back me up. So the monitoring agent, the polling agent, has to constantly see if the resource is up or down. So these are the 10 specialized cloud mechanisms that you could that is implemented in the cloud. Automated scaling listener, load balancer, SLA monitor, pay-per-use monitor, audit monitor, failover system, hypervisor, resource cluster, multi-device broker, and state management database. So in one line, if you have to explain what is this automated scaling, so scaling definitely means something to increase or decrease, right? That is what it means. So when we say scale, means definitely we're talking about resources or machines, right? We want to increase the number of machines, we want to duplicate it so that we can manage the load. So automated scaling listener, so listener means I am listening to whether I have to increase or decrease, whether this resource should be increased or decreased. I'm a listener. So that is very important, right? To listen into the needs of the resource. So how will we know whether something, whether I have to increase or decrease it, depending on the number of people using that services, right? If there are more people using the same service, then there will be some benchmark, saying that after so and so limit, we will increase. And if the number of people have, number of consumers have reduced, then again that has been listened to, right? We are listening to how many people are using the service. If it is less, then we reduce the resources. So that way we pay only for what we use. So here you see pay per use monitor is pay per use. So how much ever we use, only that much we pay for. So somebody has to keep tracking that separately. So pay per use monitor is used for that program, which tracks the billing usage and stops the resource usage if required. So the load balancer, right? Load balancer is a program which distributes the load across multiple IT resources. So which would mean that if there are three or I've been given I've duplicated 4 servers. So resource replication mechanism is used over there to replicate the same resource. But now I have to distribute the request, right? So 10 people in India are visiting the website. That load maybe I will be sending to one server. If people from Africa are connecting to the server, I will be sending that request to the second server, and all these servers are the same, right? They have the same software and they are the same website. So, and who is balancing the load? Who is deciding which server will get which request? It is a load balancer. So this is very important. So what is the advantage? If the load is not given everything to, it's like one person is not given all the work, then then if the load is distributed, then more work can be done efficiently, right? So your basically your performance will be better. So in the same way, machines, if one machine is not loaded with lot of work, that machine can perform better. Okay, so SLA monitor, program which monitors for SLA specific data. So what are we monitoring over here? We are monitoring for performance. So for example, you don't buy a car without knowing what performance it will give, right? That will be always be a performance that you look up for. Okay, if I buy a Toyota, this is the kind of mileage I will get. This is the kind of sale price I will get in case. This is the kind of support service I will get. And the support service is 99% good. So these are called service level agreements. Where the provider gives you that in a service level agreement that my machines will always be available. There will never be a time where my machines will be down. So but somebody has to monitor that, right? Whether the provider is able to actually provide that performance. So how does provider manage? Provider has given you a word that my machines will always be up, but how does he manage doing that? He definitely looks out for, he has a SLA monitor program in place where he is looking out for whatever he has promised. There is a program running to measure it, separate program to measure the service level agreement. Okay, have I faltered on the service level agreement? If yes, then immediately an action has to be taken, something has to be done by the provider, because provider is given a word in agreement that my machines are going to be up. If the provider is not given the agreement, then no problem, he will not monitor that is not so important for him. But whatever services he has promised you in the service level agreement, that has to be monitored. And who is monitoring that? Service level agreement monitor. So it's a program, okay, it's not some agreement, but it's a SLA monitor. It is specifically designed to measure the service levels. So in the same way, in the car, there has to be some monitor. If the car says I'm giving so and so mileage, there has to be a way to measure it, right? So pay per use monitor, as I told you, every resource will have this program, right? Every service will have this program. So what all services you have on the cloud? You have, I want to create a machine, I want to create a S3. Okay, how much should I pay for the S3? Is it a free tier? Is it a is it a is it crossed a free tier? Is it not a free tier? How will we know that? So how much you have used, that has to be measured. And who is measuring that? Pay-per-use monitor. Again, this is a simple program. So you can think of all this as programs, okay, which are which are mastered to perform a particular activity. Because running a cloud is a big commitment, right? There is so much running a public cloud, I mean to say, because public cloud there are so many consumers, and if the reputation goes down, your business goes down. If you cannot meet the service level agreement, if you cannot manage the resources, all this will be not good for the cloud provider. So this the selling point of cloud provider is that everything is easy and everything is fast and everything is anywhere. So you can do anything, you can get all the cloud services very quickly without wasting time, right? If you are working on the local machine, maybe you have to deal with a lot of installation configuration, but ready-made environments are available on cloud. So failover system, a system that ensures duplicated redundant system is available in case of system failures. So so on one end, we we are making sure we can replicate resources, but what if the system goes down? Failover system has to be put in place. Like where if something goes wrong, then I have to be up. So system that ensures duplicated redundant system is available. So duplicate redundant system is backups, right? So we already spoke about active, passive, right? If there are two servers which are active, which are performing the same thing. So so in your load balancer also, load balancer is sending the request to multiple servers of the same kind. So even if one server goes down, at least if there are 4 servers, 3 servers will be there to take the load, okay? So so there is some kind of a failover system. So load balancer is using active configuration of the failover system. So remember this, load balancer internally is a kind of a we are also is implementing a failover system indirectly, because we have multiple resources which are catering to the service. If one service goes down, the other services are still available. What is hypervisor? The hypervisor is a software that manages virtual servers, and we already know, we have spoken a lot on this. A resource cluster is a software that manages a cluster of similar dispersed resources. So which means we are we are not having only one machine to manage everything. We are clustering similar kinds of machine to increase the power on the performance and the ability to do more. So if we have a cluster of resources, we can give them a task, and in parallel computing we have already covered this, right? Where we have a cluster of 3 or 4 servers, we can distribute the task. So Hadoop is that kind of a system, right? So resource cluster is one technique. So internally how resource cluster is implemented, maybe Hadoop is used, we do not know. But cloud can use all these techniques. How is hypervisors used? Maybe cloud is using Zen, right? Or VMware, all this, whatever softwares, cloud provider, it may be using some softwares internally, or it may be developing its own software. So it is not necessary. Most of these softwares are already available actually in the market. So many of them are free also, right? So cloud could, if somebody has to design a cloud, then they know they have to implement the 16 things, but the programs may already be there in the market. So multi-device broker, a broker software that is tuned to interface with any user devices, that is mobile and desktop. So which means cloud is providing the service. So you can log in from your mobile, you can log in from your desktop, right? All different kinds of devices are there. But how does cloud manage? And also many cloud consumers are there. So we are looking at so many different types of end user devices, where everybody is trying to access the cloud from the mobile, from the desktop. So but cloud is a single central point, right? So how does cloud make sure it can work on mobile, it can work on desktop. So this is what is used, a multi-device broker. It is like an in-between software that before I send my data to you, I will make sure I find out what type of device you have, and based on the type of device you have, I will do some changes. So for a mobile, usually the video may be encoded in a different format. For a desktop, the video may be encoded in a different format. So in the same way, if somebody is using a cloud website, they will cater the website in a different way for different device needs, right? So you have this Bootstrap program, right? Your JavaScript framework. So basically, it can align itself in the way the end user devices. So multi-device broker, we do not know whether they are using Bootstrap or what they are using, but all these tools are available, okay, to implement this mechanism. State management database, a shared database between similar resources that stores the data temporarily to enable restoration of services or functionality of any redundant resource in case of failures or need. So basically, it's a shared database between two resources, like two virtual machines are there, and but both of them may be using the same database, and so one machine will know what is, both the machines will at the same time will know what is the data between them, okay. Both of them are separate machines, but still they are sharing the same database, and since they are sharing the same database, the information that is there in the database is known by all the virtual machines or all the resources. So we'll look at it in little bit in detail when we get to it. Okay. So having done that, so we'll be just since that was a big load of I think we can take a we'll take a 10 minutes break right now, okay. 3:20 will start because I wanted to start fresh for each piece at a time. So rather than doing little getting inside, and so it's better to start afresh. So I hope you all understand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 specialized cloud mechanisms, and what each one of them are supposed to do, there's a one-liner description over here. And so we'll go more in detail after 10 minutes. So we'll connect in 3:20, okay. Let's continue with automated scaling listener. So this is the first specialized cloud mechanisms, right? So this is let me just verify once again. It's recording, yeah. So this is the first specialized cloud mechanisms, right? It is doing something special, right? And what it is doing, it is scaling. It is listening to the needs of automated scaling. Means automatically things. If somebody needs 4 resources, automatically we should know about it, or automatically if somebody does not need 4 resources, just needs 2 resources of the same kind, then we should know about it, and that is what listening is. But what does scaling means? So that's what we explained over here. Scaling, as we know, it is means to grow or shrink something as we need. Sometimes we need more virtual servers to manage a lot of web requests, so we scale out. So whenever we are increasing, we are scaling out, and whenever we are decreasing, what we are doing, we are scaling in. So scaling in means decreasing the number of resources, and scaling out means we are increasing the number of resources. So if one machine becomes 4 machines, it becomes scale out. If 4 machines becomes 2 machines, it is scale in. The automated scaling listener mechanism is a service agent that monitors and tracks communication between cloud service consumers and cloud services for dynamic scaling purposes. So the word is called dynamic scaling, right? Because dynamically it is able to change or scale depending on the needs of the cloud consumer. And so the automated listener mechanism, where is this software piece lying? It is lying between the cloud service consumer and the cloud services. So if the it will come to know that the consumer needs more services of the same kind, so it is trying to monitor that. So if it needs more services, then it will scale it, or it will scale out or scale in. Automated scaling listeners are deployed within the cloud, typically near a firewall, from where they automatically track workload status information. Okay, so before even it so as we know, firewall is almost on the edge of the near the cloud, uh, near the cloud consumer, right? So whoever is, so cloud consumers is basically, we are all, let's say, accessing the cloud. The first thing that we are going to hit by is, even before reaching the cloud, is firewalls. So only, so automated scaling listener is somewhere installed at that level, just beyond the firewall. If it crosses the firewall, means firewall has allowed this cloud consumer to get in, and now the scaling listener can listen into what type of resources, or what type of services this cloud consumer is looking out for. Does he want to scale? That is what it is. This automated scaling listener is looking for an answer. Do you want to scale now? So most of the time you may not want to scale, right? And but if does, then it will take necessary action. So what are workloads? So workload is basically the amount of work, right? So the volume of cloud consumer generated requests. So if there is a lot of web request coming to the web server, that is a bigger volume, and that is a bigger workload. So sometimes the workload is coming from the cloud consumer side, but if you see the second point, what it says, the workload can be determined by backend processing demands triggered by certain type of request. Means inside the cloud also, there are a lot of services which might require more machines. So especially when you go to serverless computing solutions, where AWS is managing all your servers and configuration and installation, and basically you don't do anything. So something like Lambda, right? A Lambda, if you're running some functions where it requires more resources, then internally it will the workload is more, we'll say, right? And that is a back-end processing, that is not coming from the cloud consumer directly. So the workload, so automated scaling listener is not only listening to does not only has to listen to the cloud consumer's request, right? It is also the request coming from the services inside the cloud. So other thing we have to keep in mind is, note that even though the request may be little, the workload may be huge. So what does this mean? Is like saying, if I, let's say, if I tell you, I want you to build kind of a Taj Mahal. Now I have told you only one sentence, but does that mean the work is less? No, because but my work is more actually now. It is not only more, it is very huge. So just because one cloud consumer is sending only 2 requests, and the other cloud consumer is sending 10 requests, the other cloud consumers, even though he send 10 requests, that request may be, the workload may be very small. So balancing the workload cannot be based on the number of web requests also. No, it is also depend on the workload size. How much work are we looking at, how many machines are we looking at, how much time are we looking at. Those are the parameters that we have to evaluate with. So the scaling listener is listening for all this. Okay, the workload, what is the size of the workload, and whether what how do we scale this, whether should we scale or not. Automated scaling listener can provide different type of responses to workload fluctuation condition, which means once the scaling listener knows, okay, now I need to scale, how should I respond? So the two things it can do, right? It can automatically scale, which means I will tell the automated scaling service, please go ahead and scale this service to from 1 to 4, or I will send a notification. So automated notification to the cloud consumer when workloads exceed current thresholds or fall below allocated resources. The cloud consumer can choose to configure auto scale or manually scale his or her resources. So it is not necessary every time the cloud is going to automatically scale, because ultimately cloud consumer is paying the price. Unless he has given that instruction to the cloud provider that you don't have to wait for me, you automatically go ahead and scale, I will pay whatever the price is. Unless that kind of configuration is done by the cloud provider, automated scaling action won't be taken, even though there is a scaling need. In that case, a notification can be sent, a message can be sent to cloud consumer saying there's a very big workload, please go inside the cloud and increase your resources manually. So scaling can be done either manually or it can be auto scaling. So automatically if it is done, so that is what is we have EC2 auto scaling, right? And auto scaling inside it's one of the services inside AWS. So that is what so the auto scaling service is for automatic scaling, but it is not necessary that things have to be scaled automatically. You may say I want to decide before I scale anytime, so you may decide to manually scale, but you just want the notification in case if there is a more load. So here you're seeing there's a cloud consumer on the left hand side, right? And there is a firewall over here, and there's the first thing that they hit, and once the request goes bypass the firewall, the automated scaling listener is looking for what? Even before it reaches the cloud service, it is looking whether it has to be scaled, so maybe the request will not go to service directly, so before it before it gives it to the service, it will scale it for you if necessary. If not, it will forward the request to that cloud service. So what is happening here? 3 cloud service consumers attempt to access one cloud service simultaneously. Number 1, that is this fellow on the left hand side. There are 3 customers which are saying I want to use this particular service. The automated scaling listener scales out and initiates the creation of 3 redundant instances of the service. So automated scaling listener is felt that for each customer I want to create one cloud service instance. So it goes ahead and creates 1, 2 and 3. Now what happens? The 4th cloud consumer attempts to use the cloud service, that is this fellow, cloud service consumer number 3 is coming in, and he has or she has also wanting to access the same service. Now what will happen? So it says that it was programmed to allow only up to 3 instances of the cloud service. The automated scaling listener rejects the 4th attempt. So automated scaling listener was configured only to scale how many resources? 3 resources. That is what the cloud provider or whoever owns that service said, maximum 3 people I will cater to. If the 4th person comes, reject that request, because I have to pay the price for it, right? So that's what it means over here. So it is rejected, the number 4 over here. So what happens because of that? Who is notified? So a notification is sent to cloud resource administrator who is managing that cloud, whoever is owning the cloud account. That person gets a notification that the 4th request was rejected. Now what do you want to do? You can do. So what does a cloud consumer do? A cloud resource administrator do? The cloud resource administrator accesses the remote administration environment to adjust the provisioning setup and increase the redundant instance limit. So this administrator can then make a decision. Instead of making it 3, he realizes there are at least 4 people making the request. So let me configure it. So he goes ahead and reconfigures it, and definitely the first time the cloud, the customer for whom this request was rejected, he's gone. But next time if there are 4 people coming in, then definitely it will be addressed, because this cloud resource administrator has done the setting to scale it to 4. So scaling, as we know, it is something that grows or shrinks. So shrinks means to reduce. So there are 2 types of scaling: horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. So we have already seen an example in our last lecture, right? Horizontal scaling scales out or scales in. So it tries to create another resource of the same type. Example, when virtual servers or similar configuration is added to manage a load, it is called horizontal scaling. So maybe a little diagram again. We have done this, but so you have machine A, right? We have created machine A, which is A, and so there is a cloud consumer, right, over here. So not a nice diagram. He comes in and he wants to make a. There are 4 consumers coming. Let me just. Diagram is looking utterly bad. This is a little better. So if there are more cloud consumers trying to access a resource, what do? We want to scale it, right? If we need 4 computers of the same kind, we'll scale it. So we will add one more over here, then one more over here, and maybe one more. Maybe we require 4 resources to manage the different cloud consumers. So this kind of scaling, which spans horizontally, right? It is expanding. How it is expanding? It is expanding horizontally. And if later, if there are less consumers, then we will reduce it, right? So it will shrink horizontally from suddenly from 4 machines. If the load is less, I can delete these virtual machines. So this kind of scaling is called, this is called scale out, and this is called scale in. And what type of scaling is this? Horizontal scaling. This is what it means. But let's say there is a storage, right? We give that example the other day. There is a storage that you are using this much storage, and you want to use more storage now. So what do? You like increase the flows of the building. That is how this is working. So where, in which direction it is scaling? It is scaling in upward direction, right? So we are not multiplying the resource. The resource is not increasing. We are just increasing the capacity of the single resource. So, and later, if this storage is not required, I can remove it. I can maybe remove part of this. I can remove part of this storage depending on the need, right? So I have reduced it now. So what I have done, I have reduced my resource capacity. So it has gone down. to this much. So this is also scaling, but this is happening on one resource. When you multiply the resource, it becomes horizontal scaling. But when on the same resource you're trying to increase its capacity or decrease its capacity, it becomes vertical scaling, because it's growing and shrinking in the vertical direction. So this is called scale up, and this is called scale down. And what type of scaling is this? Vertical scaling. So I hope you all understood what vertical and horizontal scaling is. So that is all about automated scaling. So next we have a load balancer is also a specialized mechanism. We have been who's this? SV. I don't know this student. Okay. Any idea who's this student? SV Jadhav. Even I don't know. I don't know what to do. I have to deny entry in case if SV Jadhav, they come in without names. Yeah, if just if anybody is Jadhav, then let me know, because I don't know any Jadhav in the class. If if it's any of the other students from your other specialization, then let me know. Okay. So the question is now where is load balancer is which type of scaling now? Horizontal scaling or vertical scaling? What happens in load balancing? Any answer? What type of scaling is involved in load balancing? Horizontal scaling or vertical scaling? Yeah, that is correct. Very good. So we have spoken about load balancing so many times, right from the beginning we have been mentioning this. So So what does load balancing does? It balances the load. That definitely we know about that, right? It is not increasing the capacity of the resource. It is like there is a web server. So where is load balancer used? It is used on the just to balance the load, right? So there is web server 1, that is your one machine. Now this web server alone cannot manage everything, right? So what do? You multiply, you create a duplicate copy of this resource, right? And so that is called, so this is nothing but automated scaling, right? It may be automated scaling or manually scaling, depending on whether it is automatically done or it is manually done. But load balancing is balancing what type of scaled resource. This resource, this kind of scaling is increasing and decreasing sideways, right? Horizontally it is increasing. And if two servers are not required, I can always the automated scaling logic will again come into place, and it will remove this, and now suddenly there will be two servers. And so here all these servers are active first of all. So this is like a kind of an implementation of, so there are a lot of things happening, right? First, automated scaling is happening, which may be automatic or which may be manual. The second is there is a active configuration in place, which means active failover system, you can say. So even if one web server is the web server is supposed to be active, and but even if something goes wrong with this web server for some reason, the second server is still up and both of them are active. Now it's not that if one goes down then the other comes up. Both of them are active. So this is an active failover system mechanism. There is a listener also, right? So there's the second mechanism we are looking at, automated scaling listener. That is the second mechanism we'll put into place over here. And what is the third one? Load balancing. So load balancing is doing what? It is depending on the number of requests. Some people are visiting the website. If there are 10,000, it may send 1,000 requests over here, and it may send 1,000 requests over here, and it may send 1,000 requests to the third resource if it is there. If not, if that resource is not there, then definitely the web those people who are accessing the website beyond 2,000 number will not it will not get the response. The website won't work for them. So because we are managing only with two servers. So there are three specialized cloud mechanisms in place over here. And before the load balancing, if the customer, before hitting the load balancer, what is that piece of software that will be first hitting? So what piece of software will first make sure it receives the request? What will be that? Before even if it reaches the load balancer, what is the software which will interfere over here with the your interface with the cloud consumer? What is this software? So this would be a firewall, right? For security purpose. A firewall will always be, software will always receive the request first. Firewalls are like security guards. They will make sure that you are okay, and then only they'll allow you in. And the moment you go inside, load balancing will see if how to distribute the request. But load balancing does not mean it is doing scaling. Okay, scaling is done by automated scaling listener and automated scaling software. Load balancing is balancing the load. So the duties are different for each different types of softwares over here. So there are three softwares in place over here, which is managing the load on your web server. So this, just like we say this is web server, this could mean any service also, right? So it can be any service like S3 service or a Lambda service or a DynamoDB service or any service on the cloud. Load has to be constantly be managed. But load balancing is mostly we deal with machines and web servers and maybe databases also, but mostly in web servers we look at. The second thing we had mentioned also was about the workloads, right? If just because one customer is coming and he is just having one request, so one customer is coming, oops, what happened? How can I pin this? So there is a customer over here, and this single customer may just have one request, but does it mean his workload is less? He must have told you to do such a big work, where it requires hundreds of services in the backend. So definitely his workload, his one workload will require auto scaling itself. So so number of requests is one factor that we have to consider, but the other factor is also the workload. And who's going to decide how to distribute the load? The load balancer. So load balancer doesn't decide based on the number of requests. No, it is also depending on the amount of workload. This also is basically how you configure the load balancer. If you say no, you follow a very simple logic: number of requests distributed equally. If that is the case, this fellow will get 5,000, the other fellow will get 5,000, and then there will be, if this server cannot handle 5,000, then that's a problem then. So the number of requests can be the thing, the amount of workload can be big, and the type of maybe content also can differ, right? Let's say if 10 people are watching a video and 10 people are just viewing the website. Now loading a website takes very less time, right? Like it may be static pages. To load static or dynamic, or even if it is a dynamic page which connects to the database, it is still faster than a video, which is each video can be like 300 MB, right? So which request we have to address first? So maybe the load balancer will be told that if the content is video, you address that first. The website, let it go. So the type of content can also be that somebody is doing a financial transaction. They are doing a transfer of $1,000. So some customers are doing transfer of money, and some people are looking at dashboard of their financial status of the bank. So this is a view summary of my accounts. Now which is more important? The transaction is definitely a direct benefit for the business, right? Type of request we want to make sure that gets first preference. So it is also depending on, now this will have website link. When you're doing a transfer, this will be some link, right? So this will be link number 1, and when you're just seeing the summary, this will be link number 2. So you can tell the load balancer, whenever somebody is using website link 1, you give more priority. So load balancer does not mean necessarily it is balancing the load of number of requests. It is balancing the load of the workloads itself. It is balancing the load of prioritized transactions. So load balancer algorithms can vary. So another thing can be that there are some customers coming from location wise, right? Geolocation, we say geolocation logic can be applied over here. So geolocation means if there are Indian customers, maybe we want to address them immediately. So if let's say from Africa is there, then we know there are only, let's say, 2 customers in Africa and maybe, let's say, 100 customers in India, then we want to give priority to Indian customers first, maybe depending on the number of customers. If the location one has 10 customers, then we want to focus on that. If our business is very small in Africa or very small in some other country, we might want to decide based on that. We may want to load balance based on location. So geolocation based logic also could be applied. What is this? Load balancing. So load balancing is a specialized cloud mechanism that is very important, right? Otherwise, they will not be able to give proper service, because as I told you, there's a reputation that is going behind the cloud, right? If I don't trust a bank, I don't create an account in that. In the same way, if I don't trust a cloud provider, I don't create a user services. So to give proper service is so important, and that is why all these mechanisms are in place. So that is what we have mentioned. The load balance has different type of logic, right? One is workload prioritization. What type of workloads we have, or what type of content we have, content aware distribution or asymmetric distribution. So here there is a load balance over here, right? And how many resources are replicated? 2 resources, right? Cloud service A and cloud service A both are same. So it is redundant. Now whom to send the, when somebody wants to access the cloud service, whom to send to, that load balancer decides over here. There is a service agent, it's a software in between. But is it necessary the load balancer is always a software? No. Sometimes it can be a simple electronic switch, right? Automatically these switches will work like a logic, that if this fellow connects, then connect to this machine or that machine. You can so it is not necessarily a software based load balancer. It can be hardware embedded load balancer device itself, where the electronics itself decides. It's like a washing machine, right? How much load of clothes you put in it, it will decide the water on that. How much is the load of the clothes in the machine. So that was all about load balancer and automated scaling listener. So now, so it's around, okay. Okay, so let's continue. Load. Okay, recording has started now. So far we have covered 2 mechanisms. One, automated scaling listener. Second, load balancer. So I hope you all have understood the difference between the two. The load balancer will not automatically scale, but it can work together with automatic. It is like very good partners though. Okay, so on one side we have automated scaling, and one side we have load balancing. If load balancer is balancing between 3 machines, and even 3 machines are not enough, then who can help the load balancer? Auto scaling will say, okay, let's make it 6 machines, and then load balancer will manage the balance the load between 6 machines. But the decision to scale is not taken by load balancer. Load balancer will balance only the amount of resources that has been allocated to the load balancer. The auto scaling group or the auto scaling your software piece or your service has to make that decisions after listening into the the listening into the needs for scaling. So the next one, we have already spoken about SLA monitor, right? It is SLA means service level agreement. So you kind of buy a product based on mileage, right? When you are buying a car, that's the example I've been given over here. When you get a car, you cannot see how it is designed internally or what quality it is, but you may agree to buy the car based on its mileage it can offer. Your mileage is something that you can measure and test the product with, and your SLA with the car manufacturer could be car should give 50 kilometers per hour mileage, right? An SLA provides details of various measurable characteristics related to IT outcomes. Means SLA could be what is the uptime. Uptime means how many like my machine will be on 23 23 hours and 59 minutes. Only 1 minute it may be down. So that is what it promises, that my machine will never get hot, so they'll put ACs and they'll make sure everything is if my machine something fire takes place, I will be replacing it with the other machine, so uptime is possible only because of all these techniques. Then security characteristics, right? In the sense I will make sure all my infrastructure, all my physical machine is secure. Nobody can attack it. Nobody, physically nobody can attack. There will be security cards and very few people, able to access it. And I will protect it from all types of, security threats. And we have looked into around 8 9 I think mechanisms, right? Security mechanisms. So where different kind of security has to be applied, and cloud is making sure all this is security is put in place as far as its responsibility is concerned. But cloud is always a shared responsibility, where the some amount of security is responsible by the customer itself, like the username password. If you are if your username password is shared, then that's a problem. If the access key, let's say you have stored it on your local hard disk, and somebody hacked and read that file, so that access key can be hacked also. So in that case, the AWS doesn't become responsible if if we as a cloud consumer has not managed our user credentials properly. And other specific quality Q is quality of I think service, right? Quality of service it is. So quality of service includes availability, reliability, performance, right? So there can be different measures that one can measure cloud, whether it can auto scale, whether it can what is the uptime, whether the whether the data that is sent is actually stored in the database properly. SLA monitor essentially monitors if the services are meeting the SLAs between the cloud consumer and cloud provider. So I hope that is understood, right? It is an in-between program. So the SLA monitor mechanism is used to specifically observe the runtime performance of cloud services. So what it is observing, it is trying to look for runtime performance, like while the cloud is running, how it is performing. That is what is called runtime performance of cloud services. So we have so many cloud services in the cloud, everything will have a monitor, so for every cloud consumer there will be whatever service the cloud consumer is using, they will be monitored, and every service that is shared between different cloud consumers, that also will have a SLA monitor. So when we say SLA monitor, it does not mean only one program is running. A copy of SLA monitor is all over the cloud. All these mechanisms are duplicated all over the cloud, and they are doing the job of SLA monitor is doing the job of monitoring. the data collected by the SLA monitor is processed by SLA management system. So who is taking, so SLA monitor will have to say, okay, today the machine was 89% up, and then what it will do with the data. So that data will be given to SLA management system. It will be some kind of a, a website or software or database. It will store it there. It will say this is what the uptime was. So tomorrow if somebody questions whether the database was not up, the machine was not up as per SLA, they can always look into this databases. So SLA monitor, the job is to collect the data and hand it over to appropriate program that will manage this entire SLA. So there's a SLA management system is like a one piece of software you can think of. The SLA management system data is ultimately aggregated into reporting metrics. So ultimately, if consumer has to know what is the SLA performance, they can be shared the reporting metrics if need be. So sometimes we say, right, how much, why are we charged so much, and something we get the details, right, reporting metrics. In the same way, we can have SLA reporting metrics. The system can proactively repair or fail over cloud services when exception conditions occur, such as when the SLA monitor reports a cloud service is down. So if the SLA monitor, if the SLA is supposed to be 99% uptime, but there was only 89%, and that reporting SLA monitor has done to the SLA management system, now the SLA management system software can make decisions what to do with the service. Definitely, if there is some problem with the service itself, then we can remove that service and replace it with a new service, right? So it is like if you're having a car and the glass is broken, and if the glass is broken, that is the glass service is there, so you just remove the glass and replace it with another glass for the car, something like that. The SLA monitor polls the cloud service by sending over polling request messages. So this is M2M, means like for every request. Okay. So there is a so this is a SLA. Okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, so if you see this architecture, what is there on one side? There is a resource over here. This is a machine, and on the other side, what is there? There is a polling agent. We have already know what is a polling agent in a cloud infrastructure mechanism. What does a polling do? The polling is an active, always awake program, right? It will keep on polling. Are you up? Are you up? Are you running? Are you running? Are you running? For every time are you running, the response should be I am running. That is what this arrow mark is. One arrow is saying are you running? The response is coming, yes, I am running. Then again after 2 seconds, again he is going to ask, are you running? He again is going to respond, yes, I am running. Then again he is going to, so this thing will go on and on infinitely, whatever, forever and ever. The polling agent will keep on asking again and again, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And every time the server has to tell, I am okay, I am okay. For some reason, if the server is down, then what will happen? Then okay acknowledgement will not come back, and SLA monitor will ask again 2 or 3 times. It is like if somebody doesn't pick up a call, we think okay, something must have gone wrong, right? But maybe not necessary. So what do we do? After 5 minutes or after 10 minutes we call again. So we are polling again, and then after 10 minutes maybe we are calling again. So after 5 times if we call, if this person is not responding, and that person was supposed to respond in a normal situation, then we think something is wrong, and what do? We log that information in the log database that it is down over here. And what happens, so who picks up this data? The SLA management system will pick up the data and say, oh, this fellow is down. So then the SLA monitor will do something about it. It will say, "Oh, let me, send their neighbor, to check out, or send my relative who's just staying close by to check out whether that person is okay." We do something. We take action. In the same way, these programs, they have to be very active, especially in case of SLA. So if you have take, if the machine was supposed to be up 99% of the time in 23 hours, and maybe 59 minutes, only 1 minute it can be down, not otherwise. So every time there is an up report, also there is a log. Every time there is a down report, also there's a there's an update in the log database. So whether whatever the responses are, whatever the responses are not, like even if you don't get responses, the SLA monitor polling agent will log it. So the SLA monitor is a polling agent. Ultimately, it is using one of the cloud infrastructure mechanisms. So this diagram, they are basically, the steps are the same. This is something 1A, the polling is happening and the up is gone. After some time the polling is happening, 2B, down happened, and after some time they try to this machine was up again. After means somebody replaced it, let's say, and then means SLA monitors polling agent's responsibility was only to inform. If some action has already been taken, then there is no problem. The machine was up and again it's back and up. So that's what all these slides are. So the next type of monitor. So monitor is always about monitoring. Okay. So definitely we are going to use monitoring agents. Cloud usage monitor. There are three types of agent: monitoring agent, resource agent, and polling agent. So the pay-per-use monitor, what it does? So pay-per-use monitor, it says mechanism measures cloud-based IT resource usage in accordance with predefined pricing parameters and generates usage log for fee calculation and billing purpose. So pay-per-use monitor, see, it is pay-per-use. Now I have used this machine for 1 hour. I created 4 machines. How will the cloud know about it? Everything has to be calculated. The number of processors that you use, the type of computer that you use, the amount of data that you use, the type of storage that you use. Every service has to be monitored, and why? Because we have to measure, right? You're going to be, it's like you're getting your bills, right? Depending on how many phone calls you did, that much bill you'll have to pay. So that is what is pay-per-use monitor program doing. It is monitoring all the resources and reporting it, right? Again, there will be some log database, and which system will pick it up? Billing management system will pick it up. In the previous case, which management system was software was managing the entire SLA management system. In case of pay-per-use monitor, definitely there will be a billing management system making sure that the monitor is billing. Monitor is like a billing person. Okay, you have used for 1 hour. Okay, let me report you to the billing management system. And so the pricing may be based on request response, message quantity, data volume, bandwidth consumption, right? How much network did you use, whether it was outbound, inbound, whether you created any keys, or whether you used any database, how much database did you use, did you use 1 GB data or 2 GB data, request response, how many times did you make a request from India, and how many times you made a request from Africa to access the same service. So pricing can be, they have this pricing model for everything. So at a very high level, we have a free tier model, right? And then it moves into business plan and enterprise plan. So so depending on the kind of plans, and the pricing will be pricing is calculated for each cloud consumer. So pay-per-use monitor is what type of agent? It is a resource agent, and resource agent is like a sleeping agent. No, it will not wake up. Only when you are using, then I'll wake up and I will see, okay, what service you're using, okay, how much did you use, and then I'll go to sleep again. Once you have done, the resource agent will go to sleep. So it is event based, based on event. So some event has to be fired inside the cloud, that so and so machine has been created, please wake up and start billing him, something like that. Okay, so that is what this diagram is. If the cloud service goes down, if the service has stopped, then also the monitor has to be woken up. So it's not that it is constantly seeing, it's waking up once it has started, and then it is waking up when it is stopped. In between, how much time you use doesn't matter to pay-per-use monitor program. It will go to sleep. So only when you start and only when you stop the service, these two timings are important to measure how much have you used, how much time did you use, and how much data did you use. That's all that the pay-per-use monitor has to know. So every time you're starting a machine or stopping a machine, remember a event will be fired and pay-per-use monitor will wake up and say, okay, you are started now, let's start billing, and go to sleep. Then every time you stop the machine, pay-per-use monitor will calculate, okay, you started at 11 o'clock in the morning and then you stop the service at 2 o'clock, the bill is so much. So it is a resource agent. It is not always awake. Polling agent, in case of SLA monitor, it is a polling agent. Polling agent is always awake because it keeps on asking, are you okay, are you okay. This fellow, his pay-per-use monitor is only concerned about कितना इस्तेमाल किया, मतलब he wants to know the starting day, and the end day, or start time and the end time, or something like that. So this is the example, right? A cloud consumer will request the creation of new instance of cloud service. That is step number 1. And once it starts, who comes in between? Pay-per-use monitor. Now does this diagram mean the other monitors are not working over here? No, the other monitors are also there. There are monitors all over the place. This is only one type of monitor we are talking about, but cloud is filled with all these monitors monitoring different things. Otherwise cloud will not work. So the pay-per-use monitor receives a start event notification from the resource software. The pay-per-use monitor stores the value timestamp in the log database. So what it does, paper monitor, it will store a timestamp. This date, so and so time. The cloud consumer later requests that the cloud service instance is stopped, and after it has stopped, what it will do, again it will store the timestamp. So the billing system, what it can do, it can take the difference in the timings, right? The start time and the end time, and calculate how much it has been billed. If they don't do this job accurately, then again the reputation of the cloud will go down and nobody is going to go to the cloud provider then. So always all these tools, if somebody is providing a cloud service, these tools have to be put in place. So on the left hand side, you see a request is coming in, pay-per-use monitor interrupts it, then it forwards the request to cloud service, because ultimately whatever website you're requesting, that has to be catered by web service, no? So billing will happen, billing चलते रहने दो, लेकिन सामान देना है, that way, खेल चालू रहना चाहिए, मतलब you can keep your fees and billing, all that process in the as a separate process. You should not interfere with the cloud services. So all these actions, so 3A means it is going to the cloud service. The cloud service is catering to the request of the cloud consumer that he wanted to create a S3 bucket. So that service S3 bucket is created, and fourth, it is giving the bucket. But at the same time, this fellow, the pay-per-use monitor, what it has done, it has logged it in the database. So it's like a in between billing, So then we come to the audit monitor. So what is the audit monitor? So okay, so what all we have finished so far? We did automated scaling listener, we did load balancer, we did SLA monitor, we did pay-per-use monitor. So I hope you all understood that. Now what is the audit monitor? Is this another kind of monitor? So audit monitor is like let's say somebody there was somebody stole the data, for example, in the company. Now how do you know who stole the data, what happened? There has to be some inspection, no? So what will the normal situation, what will happen, they will always look at chalo security camera ka data dekhe, so that is like a audit data. Somebody is auditing and monitoring. Somebody is checking, so okay, this person is come, okay, then we'll take some action now. Or this person was not there, whatever decisions have to be taken, we cannot know unless we look at the audit data. But who is going to keep track of audit data, or what is an audit data in cloud? So definitely a audit data means something like which IP address has accessed my box, what was the root account that accessed this box. Everything will be checked, right? Who did what at what time, what service was called, what was the sequence of operation, everything. All this is audit data. So this data has to be collected. Right, that time we are not checking whether that person, whether that he is an attacker, or he's he's a normal customer. That is not the duty of audit monitor. Audit monitor is only responsible to take the data and store it somewhere. If somebody said I am Mr. A, then that audit monitor will take A and give it. As far as security is concerned, somebody else has to, some other software has to look into the security in case something is gone wrong. But as I told you, audit monitor, audited data is used only when for reasons of security, for reasons of regulations and contractual obligations. So for example, the government may say, may pass a regulation that whichever student comes and registers in the university, they have to give Aadhaar card. Maybe that is the regulation. So that regulation then the university has to follow. And so based on the regulation, the auditing has to be done. And who is managing that auditing? Audit monitor. Audit monitor is implemented as a monitoring agent. So again, monitoring agent is a sleeping agent. It will wake up only when something is happening. So if somebody visits the website, it will wake up. If somebody is not visiting the website, it will sleep. So who is doing the authentication service? Whether the as I told you, audit monitor is not responsible to check whether that person is a valid user. That will be done by your program. So audit monitor will forward that request to your authentication service, and your program will make sure the username password is proper and respond back. If it is not proper, then the cloud consumer will not be able to give login. But one audit record has already gone that there was an attempt to log in by so and so user. So understand the difference. Auditing is not authentication, it is only tracking the information that is coming in through who is coming in and who is going out. All that information is again kept in some database over here, number 4. Tomorrow if something happens, all that one has to do is look at this database. So definitely without a doubt this database is backed up at least 2 or 3 times in different locations, because audit data cannot be lost. That will be the mandatory for cloud. Okay, if they are storing an audit data, it means it is important. Either they feel it important or somebody has told them about this regulations. So these are the steps. We will explain the step number 1. Cloud service consumer requests access to the cloud service by sending a login request message with security credentials. Means my username password I am sending. The audit monitor, step number 2, audit monitor intercepts the message. Means now he will intercept it. He will see what is that message and forward it to the authentication service. And this authentication service number 3, he will respond whether this person is allowed to username password is okay or not. So before moving out, audit monitor logs it inside the database and forwards the request of the authentication service back to the cloud consumer. So without doubt, again there may be a firewall in between, but they have not showed it for otherwise it will be a complexity. But between the cloud consumer and the cloud provider there will always be firewalls. So with that, So with that we have completed at least 5 of the specialized cloud mechanisms. So we finished automated scaling listener, we finished load balancer, we finished SLA monitor, we finished pay-per-use monitor, and we finished audit monitor. Okay, so let's look at something. Let's take a step forward. So now we'll continue with our specialized cloud mechanism. We'll look into other 5 also, right? Failover, hypervisor, resource cluster, multi-device broker, and state management system. So what is like a failover system? It is like you are carrying, when you're going to write the exam, you're carrying 2 pens, right, for the exam. Are you using that second pen? No. Are you, or maybe if it's a pencil, are you using the second pencil? No. That second pencil or third pencil is your failover system mechanism. If your first pencil something goes wrong, second pencil will come. So what type of in this example, is it active type of failover system, or is it active passive kind of failover system? So this would be an example where if you are carrying 2 pencils to your exam, and one pencil, if you are not using it, that is a passive pencil, and the pencil that you're using is an active pencil. When the active pencil something goes wrong, you make the passive pencil active, and that becomes your new active pencil. So so in this example, it is an example of active passive configuration. So a failover system mechanism is used to increase the reliability and availability of IT resources by using established clustering technology to provide redundant implementation. So so a failover system may be using a clustering technology. Okay, so as we know, cluster is a group of resources, right? It may mean that let's say if you want to do parallel computing, you want parallel computing to be done with the help of 4 machines. That 4 machines can be form a one cluster. So it will look as one, even though it is 4 machines, for you it is looking like one computer, and you, whatever task you're getting, you're giving it to that one computer that you think, which is called a cluster. Okay, so maybe I'll explain a little bit more with a diagram. So we have already spoken about failover system multiple times. So it's one of the mechanism to keep things alive. Yeah. So what is a cluster? That is what we are trying to say thing, right? So you may have one machine, right, which is machine A. In your load balancing, what do? We have a load balancer over here, right, who will balance the load between different machines. But all these machines, they are all of the same type, right? Same web server it is. 1, 2 and 3. For us, this is looking like 3 machines. right? But actually they are all using, that is all implementing the same web server. It is just a duplicate copy. And why you have created a duplicate copy? So that load balancer can distribute the task between the same resources. It is the same website on all the three boxes, 1, 2 and 3. It is no different webs in this. So but logically they are one unit, right? This is can be said to be a cluster. This is a cluster over here. So whenever we are using some kind of parallel computing, or in this case whenever we are having same type of resources, like two pencils is the same resource, right? And we want to decide which resource to use or not to use, or we use clustering technology. So load balancer as such is dealing with the cluster. Okay, it is dealing with the machines in the cluster directly. Maybe it is not like the load balancer itself is a interface, which is like a cluster interface, right? It is an interface to the cluster. So before anyone uses what machine to use, load balancer cluster interface will decide which machine in this cluster will be using it. All that we have to tell, all that we have to configure is these are the three machines which is clustered together, something like that. So in the same way, failover system, so there may be another system. So what is a failover system? Failover system in the, if let's say you have a fourth machine which is part of this cluster, but it is inactive. So it is part of the cluster. So how many machines are in the cluster active? Only 3 machines. If something goes wrong with this machine, so if something goes wrong with this machine, this is a inactive mean, this is a passive one, right? I can make it active. I can make it active. So I will so this connection then will be lost, and a new connection will be made to the active one. So we are taking an example of load balancer, but we don't when we are using some machine, like a virtual machine, not necessarily we are using load balancer, right? So in that case, so we may create 2 machines for ourselves, like a backup, and we may so machine A is an active one, so we may create a cluster of 2 machines active, and we will say this machine is available in availability zone 1A, and this machine I will purposely create a passive one in a different zone. So this machine can be availability zone 1B. So what is availability zone? It is like different locations, right? So this availability zone means this is Mumbai, this is Mumbai, let's say, or let's say this is Mumbai, and this is Pune. So purposely I have kept the machines very far, because if something happens to Mumbai, there is a connection over here, which is like my failover system in between. This fellow is watching out, in between. And what is this system? Failover system is active. So not necessarily in this case load balance is not there. What it means, if something there is a unexpected incident in Mumbai, right? It's kind of no longer available, the passive one will become active over here. So this is called active passive configuration, and So I hope you all have understood active passive configuration. In active configuration, both the systems are always on. So you can take the service. So a load balancer, usually it is an active configuration, right? You don't have passive computers on the load balancing cluster. You always have all the machines active. But sometimes certain services, like you're having your own machine, you might tell the cloud that create a if I have created this machine in zone 1A, then create one more in 1B, or you maybe whenever you're creating a database, you will say create a database in active zone 1A, but create a backup of this in 1B. So not every time you're going to decide whether this system is going to have failover system or not. The cloud itself may decide to have a failover system, especially if it is a AWS managed service. So AWS, the example of AWS managed service is something like Lambda, right? Lambda S3, where you simply tell you want a bucket in S3, and AWS says that I will take care of your buckets, I will take care of your data, and I will make sure it is always available, and always there will be a backup. So internally, how S3 implements this, it may be using failover systems mechanisms to make sure this is always available, and they can manage your data is always available and protected. So failover systems can be applied on any type of services, especially in AWS managed service. You will always have some kind of a failover system in place, and in case if you have to manually do it, then you have to configure it accordingly. So a failover system is configured to automatically switch over to the redundant means repeated, or standby, right? Standby means passive IT resource instance whenever the currently active IT resources becomes unavailable. Failover systems are commonly used for mission critical programs and reusable services that can introduce a single point of failure for multiple applications, right? So I hope you all understand single point of failure. Let me draw the diagram. So far we have seen how load balancer works, right? Load balancer is like an interface, like a cluster interface, and this load balancer is responsible to do what? To manage the load and distribute the load among different machines. All the machines are of same type. All the request is going to so load balancer receives the website request or whatever the service request from the customers. So based on some decisions, then the load balancer distributes the load. Either it will contact this machine or this machine or this machine. It has a choice based on whatever algorithm it has. But the load balancer, what if something happens to the load balancer itself, this fellow? Because you have kept only one person over there to balance the load, so this is called the single point of failure. So whenever you have this kind of architecture, let's say you're having only your all the data is going. So another example would be what would be of a database, right? So you have a database over here, and all this these web servers, they are storing the data in the same database. This fellow is storing this data in same database. This fellow also is storing the data in the same database, and this fellow also is storing in the same database. Again, all these three, this is a single point of failure again, because everybody is relying on this fellow to be performing, right? So it is like you rely only on one player all the time in the team to perform, to bat and everything. But how can, if what happens if that player gets out? That is a single point of failure. So single point of failure, always look out for single point of failure. And what is the strategy then? Single point of failure. You create redundant systems. We like if I have one batsman, if one batsman fails, then the second batsman will take over. Something like that. You have two batsmen, two bowlers. You always have a failure. We don't ever rely on one player, right? So we eliminate the failure, the single point of failure by always creating multiple copies, to avoid this single point of failure. And what do we put in place? We put in place failover systems. If one system goes down, there's a backup. It's like your electricity, right? If electricity goes down, we have a backup power. It is not a single point of failure. So let's assume this is a sorry, hold on. So we have a how do we shift this? Yeah. So we have a failover system over here. So let's put it in this software in a box. Who is watching redundancy? Now, so this is like a switch, okay? I think failover system is like a now the failover system is created in because of the failover system. If this fellow is not accessible, the second fellow will be available, or maybe both are available all the time. That way, in that case, if both are available, if both the databases are same, means if A is saved over here, update A you did over here, then A has to be saved over here also. If in an active configuration, synchronization is important. If both the databases are same for this website, then both the databases should have the same data all the time, and that's why synchronization is required in active configuration. Synchronization is actually required in active passive also, but this in this case it should be the synchronization should be quicker, okay, because any database may be accessed, no? If both the databases are same database, then the data also should be the same in both the places, so the synchronization has to be quick. So so AWS will tell you, there is a word actually that if there are 3 backups been taken, the third database will take time. So there is a time for the data to reflect. So if there is another, if a failover system has 3, one more over here, the time to take to update all the 3 databases will take time. So see, this fellow will take time. So this fellow may take 1 second. In the second 2 databases will be updated, and in the third second third database will be updated. This is what is this called, that when the database cannot be immediately be updated, but it is taking time because there are multiple databases, one database and second database is updated, then the third database is updated, only then it is the same data. What is this called? This word is so important. So remember, this is called eventually consistent databases. This is asked even in AWS exams. Eventually consistent means this database number 3 will become consistent eventually, not immediately. Okay, it is not immediately consistent. Eventually I will be consistent. Eventually my data will match with the first database. So it is called eventually consistent database. So this is a property of S3 and AWS managed databases. Now in this case, if the load balancer is a single point of failure, what do we do then? So if the load balancer is a single point of failure, we even create a another active load balancer. So wherever you want to eliminate the single point of failure, create another copy and put what in between? Failover systems. So now the single point of failure can go away by putting a failover system in between. So again there is a failover system over here which is kept in between. Now the request will go to whom? Is not exactly it goes to failover system, but definitely failover system is just making sure if both the PCs are running or not, right? So how can one do internally? It may be using a polling agent mechanism, right, which says are you awake, are you awake, so is this load balance okay, is this load balance okay, it keeps on checking. So failover system would definitely internally maybe using some cloud infrastructure mechanism to make sure everything is running. So that is what is failover system. Okay, so a failover system comes in two basic configuration: active passive. An active failover system, the redundant system is active, right? The redundant means the replicated system. In an active configuration, redundant implementation of the IT resources actively serve the workload, means both the resources are actively serving you. If you tell database A and database B both are active configuration failover system databases, if you go to A will store the data. If you go to B will store the data. If you store data in B, then B has to tell A that so and so data is updated. It has to synchronize. If you have updated data in database A, then A has to tell database B that I am updated. So synchronization is very important in a active configuration. Load balancing among active instances is required. So definitely when you are having two active instances, you cannot always go to Mr. A, right, or database A. You have to make sure the load is properly balanced, and that's why they say load balancing is required in an active failover system, preferably. When the failure is detected, what happens then in an active configuration? When a failure is detected, the failed instance is removed, and what do we do when the failed instance is removed? We replace it, right? So we have to replace it. This is a diagram which says there's a load balancer, there's a failover system, and what is this failover system managing? The two services. So it says when the failed cloud service A is recovered or replicated back, the failover system commands the load balancer to distribute the workload again. So load balancer so when the failure is detected in one cloud service, the failover system will come to know, right, because it is polling for both the services, and the failover system will, what it will do, it will tell the load balancer to switch off this, don't send your request to cloud service A. So failover system is informing the load balancer, this one service is down, I've been checking these two services, one service is down, please don't send request over here. That is what this paragraph means. And what happens later, when the failed cloud service A is recovered, means now it is back up. Failover system will again inform load balancer, see now it was down, now it is up, now we can continue to send your workload request over there, and then it will keep balancing between the two. So there is a communication between the failover system with the load balancer. So whenever something redundant services are going up or down, failover system will detect it and inform the load balancer. In active passive failover system, the standby or an inactive implementation is activated to take over the processing from the IT resources that becomes unavailable, and the corresponding workload is redirected to the instance taking over the operation. So this is an example where the your network data, the router is supposed to go to cloud service A, but what if cloud service A goes down? It will the failover system will detect that there is a problem in cloud service A. It will tell the router, now stop sending the request to this service. The service is over here now, so you pass the request over here, and then the router will send the request whenever certain IP address has been configured. So router works with the help of IP addresses, right? So both these cloud services will ideally have the same IP address. So remember that if one cloud service goes down, the other cloud service also has to have the same IP addresses. So you see the router is changing the direction after failover system has told router that there is a problem with this service. So the second service was a passive service, now it has become active service. So that is all about failover system. Okay, so with this I think for today